So, in the latest episode of Ready to Love, the drama begins. The first bit of drama is the triangle between Blake, Sue-Ann, and Jeffrey regarding what Blake may or may not have said when he was speaking to Jeffrey on the phone, off camera. Following that, we have the drama, which is a love triangle between Morgan, Lyndon, and Tony. And lastly, someone, as we've seen every season, self-eliminates, and that opens the door for not only new connections, but the end of some connections as new ones begin. So, who self-eliminated and why? The answer is Andre. Andre contracted COVID, and with that, he self-eliminated. Now, it isn't 100% clear what the parameters were regarding his self-elimination, since we don't know what Will Packer Productions, much less OWN, believe should be the process for someone gets COVID, especially during the journey. Thus far, when it comes to getting COVID, people got it around a reunion show, like Tommy did, which is why Tanika Ray had to take over, but during the actual journey, we haven't had someone get COVID, so between trying to protect the other cast members, maybe the issue of someone missing too many episodes, that could be why he had to self-eliminate. Since, if you look at last season, I forgot his name, I think LJ it was, because he missed just one thing, Tommy had him kicked off, so it could be similar to that, or it could be that COVID was just an excuse for Andre to leave, even though it seemed he was really into Cynthia. It's hard to say. All we can really do is speculate and hope that when it comes to the reunion show, maybe we'll get some kind of answers. This is assuming he shows up. But setting that aside in terms of theories of why he left, him leaving does lead to a bit of a reckoning in some ways, or perhaps reckoning is too bit of a dramatic word, but it does definitely shift things for some people. Cynthia, for example, because none of the other men seem to understand how good of a catch she is, she now doesn't have anybody in her top. But luckily for her, Anthony, who we've barely seen this season at all, he decides to swoop in, and he's charming enough to not necessarily be a replacement for Andre, but at least be someone who can, in the now, show her that this process is worth it. But she isn't alone in terms of adjusting to Andre leaving. Jeffrey, who was very much into Andre, finds herself now gaining the attention of Mark Anthony, who not only takes her on a date to do some bull riding, the fake mechanical kind, but also when nephew Tommy has a mixer, he shows his intentions in a way that leaves Demario a bit uncomfortable. And the reason for that is, during the yacht mixer, we see what we saw last season, I believe, and also maybe the one before, where the cast members are pushed to verbally and physically show who they're interested in. In Mark Anthony's case, he makes it clear that he's into Jeffrey and also Mercedes. He rubs both of their feet as part of one of the challenges, with Jeffrey's feet notably being rubbed first, and also he kisses Jeffrey on the lips. That kiss makes it so Demario decides, you know what, I'm going to focus everything on Corvea now, because he's pretty much disgusted by Jeffrey at this point. But at the very least, with Demario doing that, we get to actually learn something about Corvea and why she's very much about you having your stuff together. And simply put, it's because she grew up in poverty. Her parents pushed her to be very independent from an early age. And with that, she can't process somebody not being on her level, them, having to catch up with her, and her not getting to write this next chapter because she has to fill in extra details about struggling with her current boyfriend while he eventually comes up. That's too much for her. It's not cute anymore, so hence when it comes to Fabrice, she was interested in what he had going on, and she seems to be interested in Demario because he's stable, family oriented, and on top of that, she's comfortable enough with him to talk about perhaps having kids and stuff like that. So while she hasn't really connected with the other men that much for various reasons, it seems like Demario and Corvea are definitely a lock-in, at least for now. As for everybody else, unfortunately, some like Jonique, they get the time of day a little bit from people like Tony, but it's not so much because Tony seems to be genuinely interested in her romantically, but more so checking in on her like, that's my friend, you seem a bit bored, lonely. So let me just see how you doing. You good? Yada yada yada. All right, I'm gonna go back to focusing on this lady who I've been trying to get with for a while now. But at least if you go by what Morgan's saying, Tony's not doing enough, which leads us into things that are not going so well when it comes to this episode. To start off on the lighter tip, Blue takes Marcia on a date, and it becomes very clear that those two are not a connection. Blue is an outdoorsy person who likes to go fishing and stuff like that. Marcia wouldn't so much want to be in a cabin in the middle of the woods somewhere. She don't do insects, she don't do animals, she's not about that life. So Blue is ready to write her off and move on to somebody else. As for Tony, Morgan, and the Lyndon situation, unfortunately, as I felt was made clear last episode, Morgan appreciates the attention from Lyndon, but what she really wants is Tony's attention. The problem is, Tony's not stepping up. He's not taking initiative, while Lyndon is, so Morgan's like, this is the person I really want, but this is the person who's making an effort I want. So with that, she seems to put Tony on notice by saying that Lyndon is one of the most attractive men there when it comes to that whole mixer questionnaire situation. And Tony peeps it. Lyndon's overjoyed by it, but it's very clear that lack of communication here, and perhaps lack of follow-up, is going to be what's the source of the drama that we're going to see in the coming episodes. But as for drama that really could have been nipped in the bud this episode, we have Blake, Sue-Ann, and Jeffrey. And the reason why I feel like that could have been nipped in the bud this episode is, let's take note. All Jeffrey really had to do between the last episode and this episode is show the receipts. Show the text messages, show the voicemails if they exist, and with that, Blake would have been off to the sunset. But instead, to protect him maybe, for who knows reasons why, she hasn't done that. Instead, she has to deal with the producers potentially pushing Blake to confront her, and since she doesn't want to play that game with him and have him, vocalize and communicate why you and your feelings, he's over here looking weird and stupid, and she is wasting her time talking to him since he wants to take it to the side and whatever. And oh my god, it's just frustrating even thinking about it. But it's not like Jeffrey is alone in this. Yes, she could have pulled receipts, but at the same time, you can't discount when Jeffrey decides to confront Sue-Ann about the whole Blake situation. Sue-Ann didn't really ask the important questions. Sue-Ann is an attorney. I don't know of what type of law, but she is an attorney, yet she's not asking the questions that she should be in order to figure out, is Jeffrey lying? Is Blake lying? Where's the evidence of this? It's his word against hers, but unfortunately, the one way you can look at it is no one else is checking for Sue-Ann that much. She's all invested into Blake, so she needs Blake to not be the bad guy in this situation. And even though we are on a point in society where you should probably believe what a woman says about a man before you take his word on it just because you got feelings, Sue-Ann has made her choice. And with that, unfortunately, it seems that drama is going to be something that we see alongside the love triangle for a good few episodes. Which leads to who gets eliminated this episode. And the answer is nobody, since they decided to put it on a cliffhanger. But what really complicates the elimination process this episode is that with it being clear that Corvea more than likely is going to get eliminated, Demario starts getting very passionate about using that lifeline, and being that the lifeline thing has to be unanimous, a lot of people aren't necessarily happy with him using it this early, much less for her. And you can understand why. Corvea has really no connections besides Demario. And on top of that, the lifeline thing, which I have to admit now that they want to use, is a bit confusing to me. I don't know if that means no one gets eliminated this episode or it just means that person's protected. But either way, because of the lifeline, now it is Corvea, Marcia, whatever, and also Jeffrey at the bottom. Corvea's reason we went over, it's very obvious. Jeffrey, more than likely Blake poisoned the well, and with her talking in front of Demario, a little bit spicy. The Blake situation, that's where she ended up in. And then Marcia is because, she's now giving off the quote unquote homie vibes, even though when it came to the whole Blue situation, she clearly is not a homie because she's not trying to be one of the boys. But whatever. Those three are now on the bottom, and it's hard to say whether or not Corvea may get saved and Demaio is able to convince the guys to protect her, or maybe the other ladies are going to get kicked because of either lack of interest or because they're starting to stir up some stuff where certain men don't want to take accountability. So in terms of highlights, I'm going to probably say until the end of the season, unless she does say something that makes me say otherwise, Cynthia is the highlight. Cynthia is still the pedestal type of cast member you want to have on this show. She has some baggage, yes, but it seems she has addressed it, and now she's ready to love. She's open to the process. She's open to different types of men. And really the only thing you can say against her is that we don't see her pursue the men. Instead, they have to come pursue her. But as we've seen throughout this whole series, generally speaking, with very few exceptions, most of the women don't like chasing. And the ones who do like chasing, they often get called too aggressive, and with that, they usually end up getting eliminated. So it's kind of a catch-22. You want to see her pursue the men a bit more so that she can get the attention she deserves, but at the same time, I guess the best way to put it is that a lot of these women, because they're entrepreneurs and very much career oriented and have all the stuff going on in their households because they're parents and stuff like that, they don't want to be type A in a relationship. They want to get to be some type of type B and submissive, and for better or worse, they pursue that on this show, and sometimes, if not a good portion of the time, it works, but other times it doesn't. But either way, Cynthia is probably one of the only people on this entire show that I have high hopes for in order to find love, while everyone else is a little bit iffy. The second highlight for me is just getting to understand Corvea a bit more, and the main reason I say is because I feel like Growing Up Poor sets a precedent for people that isn't really appreciated when it comes to this show, and maybe also men in general. Well, men in general and definitely men on this show. Because it's very easy to write off Corvea as someone very superficial, maybe even someone who can be gold digger status. But let's be real, it's not cute to struggle with your partner after a certain point. After a certain point, you want a partner that's established, a partner you can go on vacations with, a partner where if something goes down, they got you, and not just got you in terms of, hey, we're going to be on the streets together, but hey, you need a few bit of money for this bill, I got you. If you need someone to help you with your car note, so you go in the hospital, got a bill, I can handle situations, because as much as love is a driving force in a relationship, let's not pretend that a lot of relationships don't get messed up because money's looking funny. Debt is something that has ruined a lot of marriages, especially when that debt is a surprise and it wasn't from a good investment. So when it comes to Corvea, I feel like her finally getting to express why she wants to choose the type of partner she wants to allows you to give her some kind of grace rather than write her off as the men have thus far. So then that leads us into the on-the-fence topics, and that's just the drama that we currently have crafted. The whole Blake, Jeffree, and Suann drama, I feel, could easily be taken off the table if Jeffree just gave receipts, plain and simple. Voicemails, text messages, I know she has to have something because the way that she was acting when Blake was trying to confront her and the way that he reacted when she wasn't coming out with anything, it made it seem like he knows if he stepped on the wrong landmine, he will blow his ass up. And then with Suann, her being so loud, even though she could be so potentially wrong, it again makes it so that you have to wonder, is Jeffree holding back because the producers are trying to hold back? Is Blake trying to do something because the producers are? Is Suann trying to really pursue this, even though there's a good chance that Blake is as bad as he hinted he was during elimination last week? I mean, I get Suann hasn't really had much attention from the man based off of the way this show has been edited thus far. But does that mean this person who's an attorney is supposed to just let all the education she has go because some man gave her a bracelet? Like, I don't know about you, but there are so many questions, so much evidence that I feel could easily be presented and dead this whole thing, but no one is presenting or asking for it, and it's kind of frustrating. But alongside that issue, we have the whole Morgan, Tony, and Lyndon thing, which feels like a high school game to me. Morgan is supposed to be this Pastor Morgan type or whatever, and it's like, if you don't want Lyndon, don't keep Lyndon on the hook so that you can get Tony to do what you want him to do and step up. Like, once Lyndon said in the last episode, while he was forced to go on that date with Marcia, that he's been trying to contact Morgan, but he's basically getting curved, it seemed like it was done for me that she made her choice. She appreciates your attention, but she don't want you the way that you want her. You are an option. You are a backup plan. Yet, she's telling us in these confessionals / the producers what she wants Tony to do rather than telling him directly so that he could actually potentially step up. Never mind, she's not really going into her own insecurities about what he may be doing with other women. Like, I don't know. I'm starting to feel that Morgan might be the type of person who's really not meant for this show, and having her top whatever openly dating other people, but that's been an issue with this show for as long as it's been on, of people not really appreciating getting to see what's going on with other couples. Like, for example, DeMaio seeing Mark Anthony kiss Jeffrey. Which leads us to the last on the fence topic, and that's just feeling that as much as we appreciate these mixes that push everybody to have who's their top or interest out in the open, we need to spread them out more. We can't have it when it's episode 1, 2, and then 4. Make it every second or third episode so people could have solo dates that can really build up something, so when things like this happen, it doesn't just trigger like those, it doesn't trigger situations like DeMaio where even though he seemed to have a good connection, it just in an instant is over because now he feels threatened and he doesn't like feeling threatened and he doesn't want to fight for anything. Nah, he wants to go to a person who clearly no one else is interested in, so that's a safe bet. Which leaves you the question, are you really interested in this person or you just don't want to compete? And granted, the whole competition aspect of Ready to Love has been one of its toxic traits, but I mean, what can you do? Okay, as for predictions, I feel like Blake and DeMaio are going to be in the bottom 2 the next time the men are up for it, and that's because Blake has one soul connection, and he hasn't really moved out of the bottom 2 since he's been on here. And I would say DeMaio's going to be at the bottom 2, not so much for what he said or hasn't said, but because... Actually, yes, for what he hasn't said, because from what it seems, he's only really made a connection with Jeffrey and also Corvea. Corvea's about to be on the chopping block. And then with Jeffrey, him, from what it seems in the next episode, blowing things up because he's mad that Jeffrey kissed another man. As just noted, this is not the show for people who are insecure about other people dating. You have to have that Mercedes type of confidence where they may hold this person's hand, kiss them, go on dates with them, but you have to know that at the end of the day, that's your person, and all they're doing right now is just looking at the field, figuring out, hey, ain't nothing worth a damn here, I need to go back to what's good. And unless you can think in that mindset, this is not the show for you. It's just not. But that aside, bottom 2 for women, with us having this cliffhanger, I feel like if Corvea is saved, she's going to be in the bottom 2 once again, since she, like Blake, is the type of person who this show just isn't for, especially with the attitude they brought coming in. And even though we learned a bit more about Corvea this episode, I feel like the well has already been poisoned and there's no coming back for her. As for who may join her, and this is assuming that with the way previews are, Jeffrey's going to be safe, I think it's either going to be Jonique or else Marcia. Jonique because no one seems to be that interested in her, and Marcia because with the whole homie vibe thing happening and Lyndon during the elimination process making it clear that he doesn't have an interest in her, what are her options? At this point, she seems like a safe person to eliminate because even though Jonique really only has Tony's attention, there's still seemingly kind of a possibility for her, especially since she and Cynthia are still relatively new, so all it would take is the right people getting eliminated for her to now get booed up. Which brings us to who we think the final couples are going to be, and right now, Mark Anthony, Mercedes still seem like a solid match. I feel like Cynthia's going to end up with somebody, and then even though I definitely feel like they're not going to make it past when the cameras stop rolling, I think Tony and Morgan could be the final three, but then they'll be one of those couples who, during a reunion show, reveal that things ended, or else that they're very rocky when they start getting interviewed by Tommy or whoever's at the reunion show.